All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you taking time to check the video out today. We are talking about the PlayStation Showcase that never happened this year. I, as well as many other PlayStation fans, have been hoping that Sony would put on a bigger showcase this year. And we still have an entire month left of 2022. We have all of December, but I think it's safe to say by this point that there is going to be no proper PlayStation Showcase in 2022. And that is very disappointing to a lot of people, maybe not everybody. And what I decided to do is put out a question here and ask you guys to give me your thoughts on Sony not having a showcase in 2022. And, I was looking through some of the responses, and there are quite a few. And people have very different opinions on this. And so I just figured it would make for an interesting video to kind of highlight some of the things that you guys are saying and just kind of react to a little bit and, just talk about this, because I know that there are maybe some people still holding out just a little bit of hope that Sony's going to come out in the next week or two and announce the grand return of the, PlayStation experience that would happen in December. But I'm almost certain that that's not going to happen. And so, yeah, that's why I felt confident kind of asking this question now. But diving into it here, the first response, and these are not in any particular order, this is just the order that YouTube put them in. Fireax says, it depends on how they tackle 2023. This year had enough games, third party and in-house. For the next year, I expect one. We don't really know much about the games they have lined up for next year. I really hope we get at least one in the second quarter of 2023. So I'd say that's a pretty relaxed response. It doesn't seem like he's too disappointed that Sony didn't hold one, but certainly holding out hope that we will get one next year. But specifically, he says the second quarter of 2023. And I think that's a pretty good assessment, because there is a part of me, and I think that others think this as well, that are maybe thinking, oh, well, because Sony went a whole year without a showcase, maybe they'll do one early next year, maybe in February or something like that. That's very uncommon. And considering Sony has a pretty decent lineup already for the first quarter of 2023, I mean, we're looking at Forspoken in January, and then in February, PlayStation VR 2 and all of the games launching for that. And maybe March is kind of a blank spot for Sony right now, but still, that's enough reason, I think, for Sony not to hold a showcase in the first quarter of 2023. So I think that's a good assessment. The next response comes from the last Shady Walking Marvel, saying it's surprising, but I really hope the next showcase is insane. And then we have MG Pant MG saying, I hope they will show something soon, early on 2023, or even before that with the Game Awards. So yeah, that's the thing. In December, specifically on December 8th, we have the Game Awards. And Sony's going to have a big presence at the Game Awards in general because of how many of their games are nominated. I mean, we already talked about how Sony is the most nominated video game publisher at the Game Awards. So in that sense, we automatically know they're going to have a big presence. But of course, people are going to be going in hoping for a big announcement potentially from Sony, or maybe even more than one announcement. And so we'll talk about that as we get closer to the Game Awards. But next up, we have Denver Walker saying, God of War was so good, I kind of forgot about a showcase. I'm very curious to see what comes next for Sony, but we have the Game Awards where Kojima is bound to show up, so I'm good for now. And so once again, bringing up the Game Awards, this time specifically mentioning Kojima, hoping that when Kojima does show off whatever he's going to show off at the Game Awards, it is for PlayStation. Maybe not. He doesn't necessarily say it has to be for PlayStation, but that's the assumption. And pointing out that we've been playing God of War. And that's the thing here. That's something that you're going to see as we go through more of these responses, is a lot of people kind of feel like, well, maybe Sony kind of gets a pass on not having a showcase this year if they weren't able to pull one off for one reason or another, because they did release a lot of games. And that's the thing. I don't want to make it seem like because we're talking about Sony not doing a showcase that means Sony had a bad year. Not at all. In fact, I think Sony had an incredible year with their games, with their studios, and even with their partners. So there's, they're two separate things. But next up, we have Zanichelli saying, it basically sucks, but I get why they are doing it. While this whole Activision thing is going on, my take is that Sony doesn't want to show their hand and give ammo to Microsoft on defending their acquisition. So obviously that's like the elephant in the room with this discussion. There's been quite a bit of speculation that the reason why Sony is holding off on having any type of big show, like a big blowout, not necessarily a state of play, but like something where you expect certainly more than just one or two game announcements, is because of what's going on with the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition. And I mean, it's hard not to factor that in when we talk about this. And, you look at how Sony's been handling this, you look at how serious they are about pushing back against it. And they, as they put it, they're confident that they think they could get this blocked potentially. So it does kind of make sense why they wouldn't do much. However, I do want to point out that this hasn't stopped Sony from making announcements. Since the time this acquisition was announced, we've seen Sony reveal a couple of exclusives. I mean, just most recently in October, Silent Hill 2 Remake as a PS5 exclusive. Sony made a pretty big deal about that, and that was certainly in the midst of all this going on. So I'm not entirely sure that is what's doing it, but certainly could be. Next up, we have Kyle San here, and he says the state of plays added up to be more than a 2021 showcase for me. Final Fantasy and Resident Evil are my two favorite series. It's so nice to see them both having a strong renaissance after a decade of having lost their way. I'm also extremely excited for the Callisto Protocol, Stellar Blade, and Rise of the Ronin. Sony's first party will have to recapture my heart. It might just be the constant bad PR that has worn me down with them combined with their secrecy. But Phase 1 for PS5 games-wise was a 9 out of 10. So at the end of the day, I can't be too pessimistic. So I thought that this was a good response as well because it's covering a bunch of different factors here. Kyle's pointing out how, the state of plays that Sony has done have been really good in his opinion and kind of made up for the lack of a showcase, but also pointing out that there are plenty of games specifically from their partners that Sony is ensuring is there. And then he also mentions something that no one else has mentioned yet, and that is the bad PR. There's no doubt that Sony has, had a couple of roadblocks and a couple of stumbles when it comes to PR this generation, but I have to agree with the last sentence here where games-wise, it's a 9 out of 10 for him. I'm in agreement with that. I feel that, that's pretty much where I'm landing as well. A 9 out of 10 with the games. Maybe even a 10 out of 10 considering we got Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok in the same year. That's kind of crazy if you think about it. But yeah, pretty interesting response there from Kyle. Then we have Jack K saying, absolutely hate it. They should have had a yearly showcase. I hope Sony's more upfront about these things, having dedicated fans waiting eagerly and then hit with disappointment is not really something they want fans to associate their brand with. But with all that said, I don't think lacking a showcase would hurt the immediate future of PlayStation, as general public consumers are still all over the PS5. God of War hype probably will carry PS5 until early next year. So another interesting response here, basically somebody, Jack K, who's a dedicated fan, saying they hate it. They can't stand the fact that Sony decided not to have a showcase this year, but he is also being reasonable and pointing out that, from Sony's perspective, the PS5 demand is still there, and they are able to kind of ride that God of War Ragnarok hype wave for quite some time going into next year. So pretty interesting. I think that this is the first response we've seen so far from somebody who's just making it clear that they just do not like the fact that Sony did not do a showcase at all. Matthew says, better be a lot of announcements to show for the next one. And that's another sentiment you kind of begin to see with some responses is the longer we go without having a proper showcase, the higher the expectations are because of that. And it's worth pointing out that the last time Sony actually went an entire year without a showcase was in 2019. Now, a lot of people were saying that it'll be okay because next year's the year of the PS5 and some massive game releases. And I mean, if you look back at 2020, Sony did a phenomenal job with their showcases. They had 2 showcases in one year, and they were both awesome. And they, I think that they just did a really good job. And so we could end up seeing something like that again, potentially, in the next year. Next up, we have Mr. Romanow saying, absolutely great year for PlayStation despite having no major event. Then we have Dream Hollow saying, we had a great year. Horizon Forbidden West, Last of Us Part 1, and God of War Ragnarok, all great experiences. I'll let it slide, but that 2023 showcase, I'm expecting Sony to go all out, baby. Continuing on, we have Adam Harmon saying, I'm fine with not knowing about games until the trailers release. And so that's just a small fraction of the responses that I got on this post. I can't go over all of them. Obviously, there's, I think, almost, or by this point, I think over 100 replies. But as you can see, there are many different opinions on this. There are those who feel that it's totally fine. They feel like Sony's been having a really good year. They've been doing great every year. They've been consistent. And in the eyes of a lot of people, they've been getting the most important thing right. And that is making sure that there's games to play, regularly for the PlayStation fan base. But then there are also people that feel as though it's just totally unacceptable that Sony decided to go a whole year without a proper showcase and instead just opted to have smaller state of plays. So, at this point, we're just going to have to see what Sony does in 2023. I think if there's one thing we can take away from this, though, it's that when it comes to showcases in particular, PlayStation is completely unpredictable. And so that's what I think is going to make 2023 just that much more interesting of a year when it comes to following PlayStation. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, leave it a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.